What is going on, YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm going to be bringing you another BT6 match between myself and my buddy Chris. This is going to be myself playing D-Brigade on the left, and on the right we will have Chris playing the Jesmon matchup. Now, this is a matchup that I have played a couple times, but this was before we had the starter decks out. So once the starter decks came out, both these decks have been able to shift quite a bit. So going into this, I wanted to test to see how is this deck going to do now that we have even more security Digimon in the deck, being able to have higher strength in the security. But getting into the match, I am going to swing with Commandramon and hit tie, which is super unfortunate because now I'm not going to be able to choke my opponent and put them below 3, so they could just go into the Jesmon. But we do see the red memory boost come out, so is going to be able to go to 0 with that now that they have the tie, get the Jesmon, and then Digivolve into the Jesmon, putting myself at 3. So I'm going to go ahead and swing with Commandramon. It will go down, so I am going to grab another Commandramon to recycle and get that Pagumon draw. Getting a Commandramon in raising, so I have a lot of Digimon on board. I am threatening, but the problem is that my opponent can technically just OTK me next turn. I'm going to play another Sealsdramon, so that way I can try to have some more potential defense, but my opponent is just going to go ahead, play the Judgment of the Blade, so it's going to become irrelevant because they are going to be able to just swing over both of the blockers for 3 checks each, and then go into the Omnimon to take up game 1. So unfortunately, my opponent did have quite the nuts curve, and I did get that first check into the tie, which really put me behind. But I did feel like I had a lot of aggression. If I had one more turn there, I do think I would have been able to turn the tides of the match, especially because I could have potentially been able to get rid of the Jesmon. Unfortunately, I didn't hit anything like Ultimate Flare, Iron Fisted Onslaught, and Security, which would have been able to neutralize that Jesmon and make it so it couldn't go up into the Omnimon. But as we see here, my opponent does get the tie. They do hard play it this time, and they do have the Savior Huckmon in raising, so they could potentially go into Jesmon next turn, but they don't have the memory to be able to Delicate Plan or go for Judgment of the Blade before they swing. They can attack and drop the Seal and get that extra memory, but not being able to get either of those on the first swing could mean that I could hit one of my option cards in raising, like the Iron Fisted Onslaught or the Ultimate Flare, but looks like my opponent's just going to decide to not even promote or go into the Jesmon. Doesn't look like they had the Jesmon maybe, so going for the Huckmon, but now they do hit the Jesmon. It is in raising, and next turn they'll be able to promote, be able to potentially play Delicate Plan and Judgment and try to swing over my board. I do have the Sealsdramon on board, which if they don't have the Judgment will be able to save me a little bit. My opponent unfortunately does have both the Greymon and the Savior Huckmon with the tie again, which is pretty much the nuts curve that this deck wants. It is not the most common curve that they get, just because this deck does have a little bit of a bricking issue, but they were able to get it, so I'm gonna have to play around it. Gonna go into another Sealsdramon here, once again just kind of hoping that they don't have Judgment of the Blade. I do decide to play the Geo Greymon and pop the Sistermon, which was a mistake. I should have popped the Huckmon instead of the Sistermon. I did for a second there forget that my opponent did get to be able to bring Sistermon back up from trash, but my opponent swings 3 checks, and all 3 checks are security Digimon. I'm going to be able to hit the Zwart into the Corgimon, into the Nanimon, and now I do have 2 blockers because my opponent wasn't able to play the Judgment of the Blade, meaning that they can't go for game here. They only have the Huckmon that can attack, and then they could potentially go into the Blitz Omnimon, but even if they do, I do have the 2 blockers for that. And now I have, what is this, 7 attackers on board, and so I am going to be able to just potentially go in. I am thinking about what is going to be the most optimal play here. I do decide to try and swing into the Jesmon with the Zwart defeat there. If they did let it go through, then I could just delete the Blanc with the on deletion and then go in, get rid of all the blockers, but I do have enough attackers to where it's not even going to matter. I don't believe this list is playing the Gaia Force, and if they do, it is at a very low count, so the chances that I hit the Gaia Force in there and die is pretty low. And then if I do, I can just go with the backup play of going with the Ultimate Flare and de-digivolving the Jesmon and leaving my blockers up, so I would be at a more safe position going into the next turn. And I don't believe my opponent would have been able to go through there, but didn't hit any Gaia Forces or anything in security, so was able just to have all the swings that I needed to go in, thanks to that Jesmon swinging in and giving me 3 security Digimon. Now, my opponent's going to play the Blanc just to cycle and swing it in, hits the Commandramon, it will go down. As much as I would prefer to be hitting security Digimon in security, hitting some Commandromons is okay because I will want to try and build up a Darkdramon if I can. Being able to have that rush option at the end could be the factor that gets you these wins when you're playing this D-Brigade deck against really anything that you're playing. Now my hand is looking pretty rough. I have a lot of ultimate flares and other options in hand, so I decided to go for this Cordramon here on the hard play. I do give my opponent a lot of memory, but I need to start drawing something or else I'm just going to get locked out anyway. So I'm going to go and see what I can do here. My opponent does have a Bauhuckmon on board and then a Voltramon in the back, and I'm okay with them having the Voltramon. It does have the security attack +2, but it's not going to be able to unsuspend, so it will really only be able to go in for 3 checks with that Jesmon, and then they could go for the Omnimon after, but I do have 2 blockers on the board. Unless they have Judgment of the Blade, they're not going to be able to go through. I just Digivolve one of my other Commandromons into a bigger blocker here so that I can cycle, put my opponent at 1, but they just instantly play the tie, so that way they're not going to get memory choked. So I have to start preparing for this Jesmon to come in. Once again, it's not going to be able to unsuspend, so it's a bit less of a problem. Because even with the Judgment of the Blade, they're really only going to be able to get rid of one of my blockers unless they want to commit the Omnimon to swing over the other blocker, which seems unlikely. They are going to go for the delicate plan here. Get the Sistermon Blanc from trash to draw, and they are going to swing security attack +3, so 4 checks thanks to the tie. But once again, not going to be able to unsuspend, so can't go for another check. And if they want to go for the Omnimon, I will just be able to block it with the Commandromon, so we're going to see what they go for. They do decide to just go with the Blanc, putting me at 1 now. I want to try and go for game here, but we do have the 2 Sistermon blockers on the board, so my opponent's going to let me just start swinging in, which is something that I'm going to just have to do regardless. I am going to leave my blockers up, swing security, my opponent's going to let it go through, and then here this is where they would do the 2 blockers, but I have been having multiple ultimate flares in my hand this entire game, so I can go ahead and just drop one, which is going to get rid of both the Jesmon and the Sistermons on the board. So now I have 6 Digimon on the board, including 2 blockers. I may not have any security, but my opponent's not going to be able to go through even with 2 Agunimons here because of my 2 blockers, and then going into the next turn they are just going to have to probably go down. I don't think there's anything that the deck can do here. They are going to Digivolve into the Greymon to see if they can cycle for anything, but then he is just going to go ahead and lay his hand out to see here that there is no play there, so was able to get that slight aggression. Missing the Savior Huckmon has been quite unfortunate. We saw that once you get the Savior Huckmon, Jesmon is much more powerful, but without the Savior Huckmon, it does have a little bit of a weakness, and being able to get multiple blockers up did save me there. But shout out to D-Brigade for coming through with that win there. This is a deck that I love, and it's good to see that the post-starter deck, it does get way better with those Cordramons and those Geogreymons. But if you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe because I'm going to be bringing you a bunch of BT6 content. But with that being said, I hope you have a great day. Peace out.